everybody. Welcome to another episode of the DotP Me-Mid Wednesday Roundtable Shenanigans Show. I'm Cyphus.
I'm Wazoo, and that was very good.
Yeah, you like that one?
Yeah.
And I'm also here with Ursinity. He's everybody's favorite Columbus Day podcaster. Once a year.
Yeah, boy. Definitely my favorite holiday. No, I don't want to get all off on a tangent because you picked a good one today. Boy, Columbus Day should not be a holiday.
Whoa, sir. Yeah, it's the reason I got to do what I did today.
Which is nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. I still had work and school because I'm doing an independent study with a history professor, and he is English, and ironically, he is the head of the American Studies department. But he's like, yeah, this is a dumb holiday. And I was like, yeah, it's a dumb holiday. So he's like, yeah, so you're coming into school, right? I was like, oh, okay, all right, I guess I am. But yeah, some places celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day, which is good. But yeah, Columbus Day is pretty bad.
Yeah, it's one of those... are they still teaching Christopher Columbus the way that they taught Christopher Columbus to us when we were in school?
Not exactly, but also I have no experience teaching elementary school kids, but with middle schoolers and high schoolers, when I've done lessons on Christopher Columbus, it's not like dark like it really should be, but it's not nearly as romanticized as it used to be. And nowadays people are like teaching more of the thing like, oh, well, actually, like the Vikings came here first, but then they just kind of left. Because that's like well established now that like that is 100% happened for anybody that knows anything. So Christopher Columbus is not as rosy a figure as he was when you or I went to school.
It was propagandized in a lot of ways to us, that entire part of history, and it was like, we're the best, guys.
Yeah.
We just came and took what was waiting for us because we're the greatest, but I also don't want to go off on a tangent because this is not a Christopher Columbus podcast.
No, I think it might be, sir. Do you guys remember that terrible Christopher Columbus animated movie that came out where, because he figured out the world was round?
I'm not aware of that. Also, he was a flat Earth believer until he died. He didn't realize that the world was round. He like steadfast was like, yeah, I went to India. That's why it's called like the West Indies and stuff still.
According to a cartoon I watched when I was about 8 years old, he was the only one who thought the world was round, Ursi, so I don't know what you're talking about.
You might be right, and you're not. But the one thing that I will like to close the subject before we get into like real talk is generally with history, you have to take the biases of the writer and the classic and the historians in general. And, everybody knows the classic adage that to the victor, or history is written by the victor. Well, almost all history that you're taught in schools in America, and I can't speak to the schooling in Europe or anywhere else, but almost all the history schooling you're taught is pro-European and pro-American. So stuff like that is really like, they kind of gloss over a lot of the other things.
It's insulting.
So, well, it's narrow-minded, but
right. I guess that's a better
it's really
way to
hard
put
to teach a holistic version of history to everybody
because there's no such thing of any one holistic view anyway. But I always jived way more with the messages of the Johnny Appleseed cartoon. Like I totally bought that guy just traveled all over the world, all over America, planting apple trees. I wanted to be that when I grew up. I wanted that job.
It's weird that because I guess when I feel like as an educated individual in America, thinking back to 1776 doesn't feel like that far away, right? Or that long ago. Or even with like Abe Lincoln, like where we still have these figures that are in relatively modern history that have legends like this surrounding them still.
Yep. People, it's very easy to forget that we're only like 150 years away from slavery or like 60 years away from like when we thought that like people of different colors were a different species. Like people very conveniently forget those kind of things. Like, your local senator is probably lived during segregation if you're in some states. Like that kind of stuff, when you put in that perspective, which a lot of people don't, but that kind of stuff, history is not that far away. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, hey, speaking of drama, there is some drama that we can talk about, and that's the Team Secret drama. So I read about like half of it before we talked about it on Monday, and then just even delving further into it. And I know it's old news. I know everybody's kind of pretty sick of hearing about it now, but since Flub's not here to put a stop to it, we got to talk
anti-drama Flub.
Yeah, so, Flub with 2 Bs. Oh, yeah, I guess we should explain that. Flub's not here today, folks. We're sorry about that. He had a big exam, couldn't record with us, and it's just unfortunately how, schedule worked out. But he'll be back next week, and so he can't stop drama talk this week.
I want to say some things, and I think it's very interesting to, see the transparency of this process, because you think everything's figured out from the top. You know what I mean? I know EG is pretty good, and PPD tweeted out something on the day that this happened saying, I'm so glad to be part of EG. Bleed Blue is what he tweeted out.
And so Misery said the same thing in his blog, except
right,
with DC.
With DC, right? And so you're seeing these organizations that on the outside look very secure, lard, put together. They had the hot girls, the secret girls there.
Oh, I remember that.
And I was just this is kind of weird. But
it was weird. It felt...
it was very weird.
I
talk about narrow-minded. It was
it
a
felt
narrow-minded...
so old school.
Yeah, right.
It felt so old school in the way...
datedly so. It's who's producing this stuff? It's I'm not going to like you more for this. I mean, your girls are very pretty. Nice to meet you. But
ironically, not to interrupt you, I'm literally holding a Team Secret pen that was handed to me by one of those girls right now because I was writing notes before the show.
Oh man!
So, whoops.
So for those who don't know, while we were at TI6, I'm sure we talked about them at some point, but
it was an odd thing that we definitely mentioned. But...
Team Secret had employed. I just saw 3 beautiful blonde women, dressed as
they were scantily clad in secret clothing.
Not that other women were scantily clad there as well, doing cosplay and whatnot.
I was scantily clad.
But they were scantily clad in Team Secret attire, branded to the core in Team Secret attire, and it felt so I don't know why,
old
but it did.
School.
It felt odd in that particular setting.
It felt like if I was 13 or 14, that is something that I would have been like, wow.
No,
but now it's just like
it felt super 1960s to me, that old dirty manager of the baseball team saying, you know what they're like? They're like pretty girls going around and walking around handing out Cleveland Indians hats.
Or like the cigarette, what do they call the cigarette girls that used to go around in the early 20th century at shows and stuff back when you'd smoke in trains, etc. Or at fancy galas and stuff that had cigarette girls. Yeah. Or it felt like booth babes, which are antiquated now, in at least most things. I don't know. I don't go to conventions often, but
I think it works.
Inherently rather sexist.
Incredibly sexist.
Yeah, it definitely feels a little sexist.
It's like something that Donald Trump would do. Sorry, politics.
No, we're not crossing into there. We hit Columbus. That's it. We told you one or the other.
I almost made that Trump joke earlier.
I'm glad that
when you were saying
you went high and I went low.
Yeah, that's right.
Never mind. I'm not going to say it. It's not worth it. Not here.
No.
But that was something that was always weird. It seemed like they were there to kind of show legitimacy in a way too. We are this big organization that can afford to do this. And reading this, it's like they've never ran a business before, and
honestly, it felt like they were trying to seduce fans. You know what I mean? That they were trying to. It was just another weird, outdated form of bribery to this organization.
It was Victoria's Secret, not Team Secret.
Yeah. Oh God. But yeah, I don't know. So considering all of that, knowing that the players weren't getting anything paid out, that definitely feels strange.
Well, they did. The thing is that payments would come late and without transaction. And whenever you deal with large amounts of money in anything, you always make sure there's a record of transaction. And so these guys would just sometimes get $36K dropped into their account, no explanation where it came from. And there's still, of course, tons of money owed. But I just thought it was rather interesting. It just seems really illegit to send that much money, wire it through. Apparently Cyborg Matt, the guy who's been doing their relations and I don't know, I guess community relations stuff and managing, he hasn't been paid at all apparently, or at least through that blog it made it seem that he had not been paid, because every time he'd been asked about it, it was a dodgy subject he didn't want to talk about. And this is the thing, is you have people pouring their lives into this like that guy, and just to be able to hang out with legends like these guys, everyone would want to do it. I'd do it. And so when people put you in that position, that's one thing. And if you can do that and decide to do that, but then you hear about the threats of beating people up when they're disagreed and those violent outbursts, and you realize that players need some sort of protection against this. to not be treated like cattle.
Somebody on Twitter responded to me, and again, like I should have read everything before we even delved into it, the little bit we did on the Monday show, but you know, I didn't realize. I guess I just didn't. I didn't remember reading any bit, and I know I was skimming through it and shit. I totally should have just read it, but I didn't realize they weren't signing contracts. And somebody tweeted at me and said, "Yeah, before like unionization can occur, they should at least sign some contracts."
Right.
And it's like, yeah, you know.
Okay, but put yourself in this perspective, and then I want to get Ursi's idea on it. You've been doing this game your whole life. Never thought maybe you'd ever make it big. And suddenly someone's there taking you to cool hotels, seducing you, much like those secret girls seduced us in seconds. And you realize that they're fulfilling dreams, and they kind of use that as a way to manipulate. And so, yeah, signing contracts is great, but when someone's giving you your dream job, it's like you tend not to ask too many questions.
Yeah. Well, and at the same time, that's also another argument for unionization unionization and contracts will go hand in hand. You know what I mean? Like the moment you have a players union, the moment you have people who can, you know, they can all collectively bargain with all teams. That's a pretty valuable thing. I mean, hell, the players, if the players played their cards right, they could unionize and more or less form a governing body for the development of new teams and the addition of new teams to professional Dota 2.
Yes and no. I mean, in doing a lot of reading on this, obviously unionization, boy, what an annoying word to say, is the ideal, and it's worked for a lot of other things. And obviously the allegories or the comparisons to, you know, classic, quote unquote, real sports are, you know, the most obvious comparisons. But the problem with unionization is generally that, A, the amount of people that it's relevant to is small. B, a lot of people are happy with how it is currently. And the other big thing is that it's international, which adds so many different layers of complexity to the issue.
True.
And also, you know, these kind of the people, you know, myself included, if somebody was like, hey, you're going to be a pro player, you know, yada, yada, yada. Like, these are the type of people that are, you know, passionate, and their hobby is now becoming their work. So they're like perfectly positioned to be taken advantage of if you are a somewhat savvy business person, like Kamal clearly was. And he's just like I don't know what he does like outside of esports, but he's just like a hobbyist that clearly has a lot of money.
He's a rich man from Turkey's son, pretty much, and he hasn't done much else, is what I read. But who knows if that's hyperbole or what? But sorry, continue.
No, that's fine. But like, he's just an enthusiast that like had the money, but so he was positioned to be like, oh, you know, I'm wealthy, so I can sponsor a team. And then clearly, like, even though he was quote unquote sponsoring the team, you know, it seems as though most of the amenities that they were provided with, they paid for out of pocket. But since they were not controlling the money, they were not aware that they were actually paying for all the things. So it's just kind of, you know, these kind of passionate hobbyists that have a chance to make a living or make money of some sort from their hobby are easily taken advantage of by, you know, someone that is, you know, a savvy person and knows how contracts works and stuff. When, you know, the people in question, the athlete, or, you know, the Dota players, athletes, whatever you want to call them, I'm not going to start that argument, but they are, you know, in general, I should say, like, you know, low 20s people that didn't finish college because they wanted to you know, pursue their goal in esports, or they finish college, whatever. That's not super relevant, but they're not the kind of people that are adults that say, hey, I should get a lawyer, right? That's just not.
And
like...
yet Misery did. I mean, he eventually had to, and let's not forget that he lawyered up, and instead of bugging them about the money, the lawyer did it, and then he got his payout, but is still owed money apparently. Yeah,
but I mean, that's like the again, like, there's such a small subset of people that this is relevant to that you can point to individual cases of like, oh, he got a lawyer, oh, he didn't get a lawyer, oh, he got a bad lawyer, oh, he signed a contract, he had a verbal contract, you know, because this kind of scene is so, you know, it's relevant to what, like 150 people, and maybe only 50 are like top tier that we really care about. So I think this kind of thing has to happen almost so that the scene can grow, honestly. I mean, when you look back,
pains, unfortunately.
Yeah, when you look back historically, right, unions didn't happen until there were events where people that were doing it, providing a service that were ununionized, were taken advantage of, and then they finally realized, like, hey, competition is good for a small amount of people, but it's not good for the larger scene, right? So this kind of stuff is just going to happen in any growing in any growing market or sport or esport or whatever, it's just the reality of the situation.
And you're totally right. It definitely faces more challenges than anything. And admittedly, I think and I realized I was doing it just even, pitching the unionization, but we have a kind of a bias with, as being Americans, looking back, like American baseball, American football, the challenges that esports face for trying to figure out how to do that are far more complex.
There need to be laws
in all honesty.
Paying out, man. Like, you see some of these tournaments
but what do you do
for... Okay, if I'm hosting a tournament, I need to have that money.
Right, but I'm saying, what do you do with, what Ursi's talking about? And I guess there are some answers to this, but what do you do with a union that requires you to have... You're gonna have to have Chinese reps. You're gonna have to have just general, like, Southeast Asia reps. You're gonna have to have
Russian reps,
reps, European
Swedish reps, etc.
Yeah, it's definitely not something I would like. If you gave me that job, I would not envy that. Like, I would not envy the person who has that job. I mean, but it's something that can be accomplished. There needs, I mean, there's plenty of talented. There's plenty of talented people out there that can communicate to these parties. We just had one leave our show, Jack. Like, that guy could communicate and be great. But
regardless, even with somebody like that, your bigger issue is you've got to get all of these players from all these different organizations to come together and come to some form of basic agreement that somehow works internationally. Because, like, look at, and there are even, like, economic hurdles to overcome with that. When you want to talk about, like, let's even just look at, like, cost of living in China versus cost of living in the United States. How are you going to ensure, what kind of lengthy talks do you have to ensure that everybody gets fairly compensated as a Chinese player and as an American player, or as a Russian player and as an American player?
And sadly, it does come down to organizations a lot of the time, and that's why this feels like such a big betrayal. Puppy, the guy everyone's known since they started Dota, is someone who, in a way, is seen to have sold out and was representing something that he wasn't. And so when the veil kind of comes off, you realize, oh, well, these are people. They're not entirely out for the game. Sometimes they're out for themselves. And I think a move like this, those guys were definitely out for themselves, and they knew what they were doing. And I think there's a reason, not that these new players on Secret aren't fantastic players. I'm just saying, I think there's a reason that he's moving more towards Asia now, because that very thing, that lack of communication and stuff will only benefit them if they want to keep doing the same thing. And hopefully the players are more well aware.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things that comes up with unionization too, on top of all these intercontinental and intercountry issues, is, if you have a union and you're going to have staff that are going to, make sure everything is fair and, make sure the union runs properly, that means that players are going to have to start paying union dues. And that's going to be hard to talk a lot of players into, right? Because if you're a tier 1 player and they say, oh, union dues are like $1,000 a year, then it's like, okay, well, whatever. Like, I win tournaments, I won TI, I placed 15th in TI, you still get, 40 grand for a team or whatever. But what about those tier 2 players that are winning, like, $5,000 tournaments like every few months, right? Like, that's such a hard hurdle to get over. It's like, well, are union dues now suddenly a percentage base? Like, when I think of, like, my dad was a teacher for 30 years, right? Like, he had union dues, like, stuff like that you just have to do. So there are all these, like, little things that, it may be an inconsequential amount of effort or money or whatever, or easily accessible to, an American player, but then you get, like, some random upstarter pub star from Thailand that is suddenly going to get picked up by Secret, and, he's going to have those problems, but, made much worse by, his setting in a country that is not, firmly established within the scene, right? There's all these little things that are going to come up. So I think unions are far away, but I think with the recent drama between Anna and between Envy and all the other things that happen sporadically through the scene are, people are going to really be hounding for those written contracts. Like, that's the simplest part of anything, is just have a written contract and make sure you're signing what you've agreed upon. No, like, verbal aspects, like with the whole Anna drama. And hopefully it all works out, but we'll see. The scene's still relatively small. It's easy to forget that, but
yeah, for sure.
Also, my last comment about the puppy specific stuff is, while Envy's argument was convincing, his argument against Kamal and against the specifics of the whole thing was numbers based, and it was very convincing. But a lot of the, like, character assassination stuff on Puppy is just from one guy, and we've heard like minor rumblings from people like Weehaw, but Misery in his entire blog post mentioned nothing about Puppy, and there's been other people like, I hate to even bring him up, but even Mason on NA Dota, who used to play for EG during TI3, he even brought up like, Puppy has been nice to a lot of other people, and that's kind of like just hearsay. So, it's, I would stray away from taking it at face value like Reddit is currently doing and just saying like, yeah, Puppy's scum of the earth, terrible guy, whatever, until we hear more from more people. Like Malek was standing up for Puppy too. So, all I'm saying is, like, we just heard one blog from one guy regarding the Puppy stuff. The Kamal and Team Secret stuff has been bolstered by another couple people, but,
Yeah.
I'd really like to see a statement from Puppy. I'm surprised that hasn't happened yet.
That doesn't look good for them either.
Has not said anything, because it's just kind of like, now it's just like, what? Like, what are you going to do about it if you don't respond? And it's like, nothing. I mean, what you did technically wasn't illegal. Although verbal agreement in Europe is very, very, it's taken very seriously, almost as seriously as a contract, you simply can't prove it.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if you can't prove it, and you can say, we gave them all this, and look, we paid this out. We traveled the world, the hotels, we took a cut, So, it is what it is.
I could have sworn we had some... When was the last time we had drama about payouts? There was another...
It was the DAC, because it took like a year and a half for them to pay EG for winning
No,
the DAC.
I thought there was another issue...
WCA?
I thought it was more team-centric, but...
Well, there was a previous drama surrounding Secret back when they weren't getting paid out, where people were blaming Cyborg Matt, and now people are saying like, we feel bad about blaming Cyborg Matt.
So it's the same event.
Because Cyborg Matt was also not getting paid, right? Because he can't pay out his players if he's not getting the money.
And he was getting blamed as this billionaire guy or whatever. I don't know if he's a billionaire, millionaire, whatever. But yeah, I like what you said on that, Ursi. Like, you'll never know. I mean, behind closed doors, you can see someone raging one time, but you also don't see the good that they might do, or how they started. So it's like you can't take too many judgments. I really would love to see a statement. And
I'll say, though, we're never going to get transparency. You're never going to get transparency unless the players themselves are the ones that take action in some fashion. Fans aren't going to be able to do it as much as we may be interested or intrigued by it. We're, can you imagine the Dota fan base not like boycotting a Boston major until there's transparency within organizations and one of the... It's not going to happen. Yeah, and
one of the cornerstones of all like real sports, which I know a certain subset of people are going to complain because they hate the real sports analogies. Like whenever Nahaz brings it up, people go wild. Even like esports people themselves, they're like bugging out. But in real sports, with the way that their unions work, all of their contracts, in most sports at least, as far as I know, are public, right? They say, Kobe Bryant is getting paid X amount of money this season, or, so-and-so is getting paid X amount of money for the next 5 years, whatever. But esports are not transparent like that. Like, because, you get paid per tournament. You don't get paid a salary by a team, except for certain teams, right? Like EG has paid salaries and certain other teams. But, that kind of stuff is, I don't think, like, esports people are going to want to be saying, like, oh, yeah, I made $300,000 last year. Like, I just don't see that happening, to be honest. But
from the players, you mean specifically?
Yeah, I don't think the players are going to want to be forthright and be like, oh well, yes, I made $75K this year, and I made $100K last year, and I made, for a variety of different reasons, I can imagine. But that seems like a big hurdle to jump through, among many other hurdles of varying sizes, which leads to a very, very confusing track meet.
Yeah,
and it's very confusing when there's so many people involved. Like I mean, like not just people, like, but you see all this money, and like you don't realize that from those tournament winnings, there's more than just the players getting paid off that sometimes. And so like it is confusing, and it'd be good to have a way to just cut the bullshit. But at the same time, it's like, to cut the bullshit and state all that stuff, there are drawbacks for the players themselves. So.
Yeah, it's not as simple as we may make it out to be.
Right.
I guess I would still just argue that that's still in their best interest. I mean, even being on the best team, let's say for the best, being involved with the best organization, structurally and financially, it's still to your benefit to make a lot of that public, because I mean, hell, then you can kind of look and go, oh, I am on the best team for this. Like,
is it though? I mean, because internally they know that stuff, right? But like, if I'm on EG or DC and I'm totally happy with how everything's going, and suddenly someone says like, all right, well, you guys are doing great, but these people are disadvantaged by the structures of smaller teams and tier 2 teams and upstart teams. So we want you to now join a union and sacrifice some of the good things that you have potentially and pay union dues so that everybody else can benefit, which, you know.
I guess I don't see a lot of sacrifice though that has to be made for them to participate in a union. And I still just see primarily benefit, which is, the potential for the scene to grow, for more transparency with all organizations, which is beneficial to players. And like I can't remember who it was that we had on that was talking about it, but I think it was Suns fan, and I may be wrong, so I hate to credit him with that specifically, but somebody was saying that there was an issue with negotiations for players because they don't know what other teams are offering or what type of advantages they have on other teams. Which, you, even if you are on the best team, like the only thing you have to go on is, oh, well, this is the best offer that I was given. Maybe that, your best offer that you were given isn't the best offer that there was to be had.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of moving pieces, and some of it is easier than others, but especially regarding the point that you just made, my argument would be, well, if I'm content and everything's going fine for me, and suddenly somebody says, all right, well, even though this is relatively easy, it's just extra stuff to do, right? If you suddenly are like, all right, everything's fine, I'm on DC, I'm having a good time, second place TI, Suns fans the best, I love memes, and then somebody says, all right, everybody else is having a bad time because the scene is messed up. We want you to do X, Y, and Z. It's just extra work. And a lot of people are going to be resistant to that kind of things, especially, I say this as a 22-year-old, especially other, like, young people that are just, like, trying to relax and have a good time and play Dota, right? Like, they're not the mature enough to say, like, all right, well, for the growth of the scene, so that I can have a job in 10 years being an analyst
there
or
are
whatever.
still more selfish arguments to be had there, though, which is that by figuring that out, like, all right, so let's look at the stability of a team roster. We just saw another big roster change. Since I've done this podcast in the last 2 years, I can remember, I want to say 25 at least, like major roster change announcements. I've seen people bounce back and forth between the same two teams 3 or 4 times. You aren't, just because you're on DC and you're happy and things are looking good doesn't mean that you're always going to be on DC. I mean, maybe you get dropped. Maybe you get dropped for a personal reason between you and the management. Maybe you get dropped because they want to go after a bigger star player who's who's up and coming, but you're not past your prime yet. You are more advantaged to have that transparency and that protection in case, in the very, very fucking likely event, you wind up on another team in 6 months.
Yeah, but I mean, I think my counterpoint to that quickly would just be that contracts solve that problem more or less. I would say more so than anything else. And if you have a contract, also if you have the previous experience of saying, all right, well, I was on DC and these were my terms, and then you're going to a different team, you have that experience already to say, all right, in my previous contract or in my previous agreement with X team, now if you're on Y team, you could say, all right, well, my previous team, I got a single room for every tournament, and I got, X, Y, and Z other amenities, and that is a form of, I was going to say bartering, but that's it's almost like leverage, right? You can, if you know the experience and you know how things work, then you don't need to have a union to tell you X, Y, and Z. That's why.
But it's a buyer's market, not a seller's market, I would say. And you were talking about that young up and coming star. What if that kid's living in a country that, isn't America, or it's a small country in Europe where they just kind of like Dendy's coming up story, where they just sit and kind of play in a somewhat, like, not that Dendy's environment was bad. I'm just saying somewhere where you wouldn't think like a great talent would come from. When someone offers you money for that, instantly people take it up, and it's not even
that's not what Ursi's talking about, though. What Ursi's talking about is if you want a union to begin, it's got to be from it has to be the current roster of players,
right,
that decide to do it.
But I'm saying people are so eager that they don't do the contract thing because they frankly don't give a shit. And we need to have that personal accountability be like, okay, if you're really good, we need to have people step in and be like, you need to be smart about this, have this type of counsel. And so maybe that's where the mediation exists. Is it a type of organization that can help players get organized in that stuff as they're going up? As for a union, I mean, I don't think we're there yet. I mean, if you look, and not to be like a back in the day type person, but back in Brood War and stuff with StarCraft, like, Americans would go over and play in Korea and sleep on a floor with like 4 other guys, and then try to get into the tournament, not do it, have to go home, and this would be like bare bones fun to.
I can make the same argument with baseball. Like it used to be
over a longer period of time. Yes, you can. This has only been like 10 years. That's how far we've come.
But I mean, the point is still being that like you still want to evolve. You still want to go like.
Yeah,
I mean,
but you can't force it. I mean, you can't step in, and like you said, there's so many moving pieces in different parts. It's like I think anyone trying to step in and be that mediator, unless you're a big organization like Valve, who can just kind of like guide the process through, which is I guess what they're trying to do with all this time on the draft. Yeah, the majors,
and the
roster
locks,
roster locks, and having that be public information. I mean, they're trying to guide it without forcing it, and maybe they need to force it.
Yeah, well, that's I guess where I come in is like, yeah, I'm a fan of the forcing it a little bit. Like the longer we do this, the more I even begin to admire kind of the and I know folks will say that they have a stranglehold on it, and they're probably right, but like the active role that Riot took in League.
Well, active is a very nice
that's
way
constricting, is what it is.
Is it though? They have a bigger player base, and there are just as many League of Legends podcasts out there as
there's shit with don't think there's not drama with Riot.
No, and I'm
there's
sure
just this huge stuff with broadcasters, all their broadcasting talent being blown off or not used and not paid. It's like
so
it happens there too.
Yeah,
the casters in League are not allowed to monetize anything. They're not allowed to have Twitch streams that are sponsored. They're not allowed to have outside deals. They're not allowed to cast third-party tournaments because third-party tournaments don't exist in League because Riot has a stranglehold. Like, Riot has some things that work, right? It's nice that they have such a structured system, but, they are overly structured.
No, and I agree.
Disadvantages a lot of people. A happy medium would be nice, though.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah, Valve is kind of just like, we're going to do this. It's like the report system or something. It's automated. If they took a more active role, maybe, they would realize the clout they have in dealing with all these people. But yeah, we've gone a while on it. I don't know what else I really have to say on it, to be honest.
I think if we can all agree on one thing, it's that Envy's blog was written in the worst possible font that I can ever imagine.
Yeah, fair enough.
I had to change my settings on my monitor to read it because it was too bright, because it's on a white background with gray text in this garbage like Sanskrit font or whatever it was, like super thin. It was actually like I was more mad about that than I was about Puppy abusing Weehaw or Kamal stealing money or anything. God, it tilted me so much.
Did you read the thing on Reddit where they're like explain Envy's life as an anime plot line, and they're like, he wants to be the very best, doesn't care about anything. He meets someone who's a great mentor to him, come to find out that his mentor is an evil like demon or something that he has to defeat. After defeating him, he discovers the power of friendship and that winning isn't everything.
He believes in everybody just a little bit too much.
Yeah.
He's truly the main character of an anime.
Yeah, but I think it takes courage to do that in a way. I mean, I know he just came off the team and maybe there's some bad blood there, but I mean, Puppy, like, to come out and say that, I think to give that transparency is ultimately a step in the right direction.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I want to move on to a Dota 2 specific topic because that's what we're really here to talk about, is what goes on in
I thought
pubs.
we were here to talk about round tables.
Yeah,
and I got a fantastic model here for you. It's an oak round table.
It looks beautiful. I love that finish. So I was talking with Ursi before the show, and what kind of sparked this concept in my mind was watching Roland play a game that delayed us recording, where his team arguably could have won. There were several situations where it felt like they either didn't respond to an Underlord ultimate teleportation somewhere, or he just didn't do it when he should have, and it was just due to like lack of coordination, and it's because he was in a solo queue pub and this guy played Underlord, and in order for that ult to be used to maximum efficacy, most times it requires the team to kind of group up and be around him and respond. And I feel like there are a lot of heroes like Underlord that aren't as viable or definitely suffer, and probably it's reflected in their win rate, I would suspect, in the long run.
Not Underlord.
Probably not Underlord. But from that suffer from the fact that they require that extra level of coordination that you are more likely to get in a team game with a 5-stack, especially like with Ham, maybe a 5-stack that you play with frequency, as opposed to being in a pub. that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you want to start us here, or I can? I'm going to take an easy one off the table, actually, and that's Io. He's someone I saw him actually carried once with an armlet and some other stuff, and I saw that win, but I think I've seen that win more than I've seen, like, the support Io win, because there's little communication when you tether and take someone away. Usually it's like, suka blia, and you just die, like, every single time, but it's like, yeah, I don't know. I love the hero, but it seems like it specifically has a place in high-tier competitive Dota and none whatsoever in pubs.
Yeah, I have made the mistake of trusting pub IOs before, and it is not a mistake I will make again. I'll tell you that much. I very clearly remember, because there are like IO spammers that have high win rates somehow, but in my experience, whenever I have pub IOs, they're like, yo, pick Tiny. And I had like a few games of that, like over the course of months, where I was like, all right, whatever, I'll pick Tiny. And I played Tiny, and I probably won like 1 out of the 4 games that I did that. And then now I've just started to just ignore it. Like, guys, like, I'm going to play Io. I'm like, okay, have fun. And I pick Ember Spirit or some like carry that just does not care at all. I mean, again, I don't carry, so this is a very rare occurrence in the first place. But Io is probably the easiest example. Io, though, is pretty good if you just have 2 people. Like, if you have 2 people with 3 randoms, you're fine. Like, you can just 2v8.
Yeah.
I think to bring up Wazoo even more, Lycan is a really good example of this dynamic of heroes that require
Didn't used to be, but he
stack.
is now, for sure.
Yeah, he didn't used to be. But I think to really, the way I would sum this up is that heroes that we see that are good or at least viable or really good in some cases in 5 stacks or in coordinated games, whether it's even in some cases just a 3 stack, are heroes that are very specific, right? They have very specific actions or specific timing windows. Like Lycan is, to continue with that example, right? He is a pushing hero, and he has certain time windows where he's very strong. So you need to maximize off those time windows, right? So depending on your build, right, if you're going Necro, you're saying, all right, I just got Necro 3, or pretty much any Necro rushing hero, actually. Like Brood is another good case of this. You say, all right, I just got this big item. We need to do stuff, because 5 minutes from now, the power of that item is going to be negligible or mitigated by the fact that 5 minutes have gone by, we haven't got anything done, and the other team's carry has a real fighting item. So these heroes with very specific timing windows, AM is another really good one. AM is classic because he's super good at flash farming, but that means he gets 6 slotted usually around 45 minutes, give or take, depending on how well the game's going. So you have to end the game at between that 45 to 50 minutes, or at least take a insurmountable lead. And if you don't, then the enemy carry is going to outcarry the AM in many instances, at least, because while they may farm 6 slots slower, boy, that is a tongue twister. Their 6 slots are paired with their abilities are going to be more effective than the AM. The AM's strength is he has this specific timing window. So these heroes with very specific timing windows is really the big one that I'm trying to impress upon everybody, but also specific abilities that are that to continue to use the word, that deal with or perform specific actions, right? So AA is very strong in a coordinated game, or even sometimes in like solo queue games, because he has a very specific counter to other heroes, right? But he's not pickable in every game because he is so finely pointed at countering one thing.
So instead of synergy with your team, you're thinking more of just a direct counter. And when pros draft something like that, they have ways to counter the other things, and your team might be not thinking of that in pubs. Yeah. So that's an important distinction. I kind of feel like a lot of things that just have to do other jobs to have a hard time being played in pubs. Like, I mean, the jungle thing, I mean, sure, people do it all the freaking time, but I mean, people don't conceptualize that that's an investment that needs to pay off in a certain timing window, and if you're not there for it, you might as well not even be in the game.
Well, and that you can't be so rigid with it, or where
you need to adapt.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times it was 2-3 days ago, I played a game with a guy who was playing a Legion commander. He was admittedly not very good, and he, was, hey, I'll come out as soon as I have my Blink Dagger. And this was at like 13 minutes into the game. He was telling us he would come out of the jungle when he had his Blink Dagger. And I was like, man, that sucks.
Yeah, things are not going great. I think you could also say the opposite about junglers. And as much as Proud and I said this recently on a Theory Crafting Thursday, that if there's one thing that .p can teach you, ignoring Roland, is that jungling is not good in every game. And if you are going to jungle, you need to know how to jungle right. But jungle, I would say, is kind of the opposite of this in some instances, where jungling is it benefits from the fact that in solo queue, provided you are five solos versus five solos, even though duos are mixed in sometimes, it benefits from the fact that people are not going to be coordinated, even in like high tier games. Like, I mean, I still see it in my games. Like, people just jungle because the enemy team, if they've already locked their two supports in early, or if they've locked a jungler and a support in or something, you know that they're not going to be able to coordinate and pressure you in your jungle. So you can just do it. And as long as you're a good jungler that knows, like, all right, well, I just hit 6. I have a smoke on me already. I have boots, and I'm going to go in. I'm going to get a duel done, or I'm going to go roar somebody. So you can kind of go the other way with junglers, where they are, in many cases, pickable in pubs, despite, not being pickable in a 5-stack game, because you're going to be against another 5-stack.
Yeah, they can operate independently, and that is kind of okay.
It's only okay if you're good at it.
Let me clarify what I meant. I didn't mean every jungler, because you're right, it does work on the other end. I'm talking kind of on the point of like a Lycan or something. Or a If you step in and you miss that timing window and you don't get your duels, then that affects the hero. If you don't go and push down towers and it's late game, if you miss that timing and all the towers are still up, you're not going to be able to hit through all those towers and get up to high ground by the time you need to. And then the game's just kind of lost. So it's like resources you spend on something that you do not even deploy at the right time kind of thing. And that's what I meant. There are like junglers like Beastmaster, and I'd even say like Enigma and stuff, that have specific uses that they can come out and just get a good black hole and like change the game, or get a good roar and just turn a fight kind of thing. And so that is definitely the opposite end of the point that you guys are illustrating, and I completely agree with that.
Yeah. So to continue with this, right, if you're thinking of heroes that you can only really pick in a coordinated atmosphere, in a 5-stack, or even, in some cases, like I said earlier, a 3-stack situation, these heroes are also heroes that are going to be reliant on other people, even some carries that are reliant on other people to just make space, stuff like that. A very good example, one of the more obvious examples, would be Oracle, kind of like Wisp in that way. But Oracle is A, complicated, and B, he requires a carry or some other core, whether it's a mid or a carry, that is going to be able to work with him and say, oh, I have my ult on, okay, let's go. And in a pub game, especially, if you were in a lower to mid-tier MMR, and even in higher MMRs, people just have not internalized how to play with Oracle, because he's not super common, and his abilities are weird, and a variety of other things. So he's one of these heroes that really does well in these 5-stack situations, despite his nerfs where maybe he's not so good anymore, but that's another topic. But he's not going to be great in solo queue, where you don't know your carry and you can't easily communicate and say, oh, I already used my ult, I can't save you, or oh, I'm going to ult you, go in, stuff like that. So anybody that requires coordination is going to be, or not requires, but relies upon coordination, whether it is in fight coordination like a Wisp or an Oracle, or in timing window coordination like a Chen or a Lycan, is going to suffer from being picked alone as a singular player, regardless of how well you play it, compared to it being picked in a 5-stack. And being able to have that open communication and going into a game with the intention of saying, all right, we picked Lycan, Chen, Death Prophet, like, we're going to go hard and we're going to do this. Or, oh, we picked, Spectre in the safe lane, so we're going to protect her and make, wreak havoc on the other lanes to make space, or, any
Is
other...
Spectre still a hero that you can grind and pick and stuff? I mean, I know it's not to the level of the Badman era, but what do you think of it now? Is that more of a situational type pick that doesn't benefit as much in pubs opposed to other carries?
I think, and I'll preface this with the fact that I'm not much of a carry player, and almost all the Spectre I see is with Quinn and Mirana, because we've actually been picking a lot of Spectre. And we've had a lot of success with it, actually. Spectre, I think, is in the pool of heroes where she is pickable, but not like not nearly as dominant as she used to be, because nowadays the metagame, many of the popular carries and offlaners and even mids to certain extents are mid-game fighters. So if you are picking Spectre, you're going to have to do a mid-game fighting build, and if you get super pressured, you're going to suffer. I think she's still pickable, but spammable hero, I'm a little on the fence. But she's definitely still a good hero.
I got a question for you.
Yeah, I've been spamming it a bit. I'll say that, like, spec, as far as framing it within the discussion, with coordination. It would be nice if whenever I was playing Spectre and the guy who played Nature's Prophet, I could rely on him or her to TP in and help me with coordinate that global capability that I've got. That would be awesome.
But you look and he's like farming ancients on the clipboard spot.
But that doesn't happen. So but the thing I'll say with Spectre is that you don't always have to play Spec that way. More frequently, what I do and what works, at least in our pubs of late, is you just watch the map. Like, if you're good at watching the map, and I know when somebody's about to get a kill, like, and I told Roland this story on a Monday episode a couple of weeks back, but you go in, you take the kill, and then you head right back to your lane and start farming. Mm-hmm. So, like, the other day, I pissed off this Outworld Devourer. Because he was about to get a kill, I haunted, I snaked the kill, and then I haunted right back to the safe lane, and I started farming.
Yeah,
and you can play Spec that way without requiring coordination, and you can get to the point where...
But it's more effective with it.
It would be absolutely be more effective.
If you had a draft like a Zeus or something,
or a bounty hunter who you want to talk about like heroes that can require coordination. The roaming bounty hunters and Rickies. If you can get some of those guys out there with Spectre, I would love to have a fucking Ricky out there looking for the enemy jungler that is always there in a 2K pub, or staking out behind the enemy tier 1 safe lane so that when that support runs a little too far back, I can haunt in and the two of us can wreck him and I can grab an early kill. That kind of stuff would be cool to do, but I think that says more about the way Spectre can interact with heroes that require that coordination than it does, make a case that he or she requires coordination. You know what I mean?
So I think you brought up a really good point, but to make one first that's very simple is I think we can all agree that every single hero in some way or another benefits from coordination, just some require coordination or benefit a lot more from coordination than others. Anyway, to get to your point specifically that you brought up, incidentally or whatever, is Spectre and many other carries and even some supports and mids benefits from the fact that she has a lot of available item builds, right? So in a solo queue kind of mentality and in a solo queue atmosphere, you can be playing Spectre and in the middle of, at 5 minutes, you can say, all right, well, this game, I'm not being pressured at all. My other lanes are winning. I have a lot of space. I can just go, phase, Urn, Yasha, Radiance. Or you can say, oh, well, my team's having a bit of trouble, so I'm going to have to fight a lot in the mid-game. The enemy team has a mid-game push comp. I'm going to go, phase, Vanguard, Yasha, Diffusal, or phase Diffusal, or not phase Diffusal, that's bad. Phase, Vanguard, Diffusal, whatever, right? Like, she can deviate and do things. Jug is another really good example of this, right? Jug, you can do these late-game farm-heavy builds where he's jumping around the map and doing all kinds of things. But you can also play it super fast and say, all right, well, I'm going to go for a very aggressive build that's going to allow me to 5-man with my team, and I'm going to have Healing Ward, and we have a Death Prophet, so we're going to be doing all this kind of pushing stuff. So these carries and mids especially, and even offlaners to a certain extent, have that option compared to others that are very rigid and say, all right, well, I'm playing AM. So I pretty much have to, there are certain other builds, but we won't go into that. I pretty much have to go, treads, maybe headdress if I'm having a pressured lane, and then you have to go for Battle Fury, right? So you're locked into that. So he's not a great solo queue carry, let's say, because he is tied into something, right? If your team's fighting a ton and your team's getting super pressured and you've lost control of your jungle, it doesn't matter if you have a Battle Fury because your team's not coordinated enough to take back your jungle and put you in a position to take advantage of the fact that you have your Battle Fury. So he's going to suffer from that. Whereas if you had picked a different carry that can say, oh, we're getting pressured, we're fighting a lot, I need to contribute to these fights, otherwise we're going to lose because they're 5-manning, and naturally their 5-man beats our 4 people, so I need to do a different build. So having that versatility of builds not only helps you individually, but helps your whole team. And, it's help others to help yourself, basically. So that's a big thing with Spectre, especially that you brought up for solo queuing. That is incredibly valuable when it comes to these heroes that are not necessarily required to be picked in 5 stacks.
Yeah. So, all right, for the listeners out there who are thinking, okay, so who should I avoid? Who should I avoid picking? Who relies so heavily on team coordination or some level of successful coordination that I should just avoid picking them in pubs and save those heroes for the 2 stacks, 3 stacks, 5 stacks, or team games. Who are your top 5?
Let's see, top 5. All right. So again, like as you'll see once I start naming them, these are these heroes with very specific that have very specific things, right? So number 1, I'm actually just looking at my list. They may not be numbered perfectly numerically.
That's fine. No
but
particular
the first
order.
one that comes to mind really is Broodmother. And I think right when you say it, right, I think everybody gets it, right? She is very specific, right? She says, I'm gonna be in the off lane and I'm gonna push. I'm gonna push real good. I'm gonna force a ton of reaction to my lane, and you guys better do stuff with the space I make. And if you don't, then we lose. And that's not a position you want to be in, all right? If it's you're saying, all right, if this doesn't work, we've lost. Like that is not a solo queue thing.
Yeah.
So Brood is up there. You have your super, super greedy carries that do not deal well with pressure, like Naga Siren. I don't play Naga anymore really because she can solo win games if you get to a certain point. But if you are in a game and your 4 people lose all their lanes and you're getting pressured and you can't get a Radiance and it's 25 minutes and you have Iron Talon, Mana Boots, and Anaki, you're just shafted, like you've just lost. So she'd be up there. Wisp is probably the best example.
Mine. That was mine.
That was definitely yours. Let's see, who else? These super. I want to say some of the super team fighty heroes that require Enigma, where it's all right, well, it doesn't matter if you get a 5-man black hole if your team isn't there and isn't coordinated, etc. But on the other hand, you can have a completely uncoordinated team that is kind of brought to a point of coordination because they see, oh, there's a huge purple ball that's killing all the enemies. So he's on the fence. I think you could make a case for him. Puck is another good example, I would say, of a hero that you can really, do well alone, but he's not going to close the game out, right? You can just be killing it as a Puck and doing great, but if your team refuses to push, you're going to eventually fall off. So you've got to do that. Pugna's another, maybe. Actually, I don't know. I actually just think Pugna sucks. But, I guess you could make an addendum that heroes that are really bad require coordination.
Yeah,
but,
no joke.
But...
So throw Lena on the list there.
Yeah, Lena's actually a good example. Because Lena, as much as I may love her, she is definitely weak right now. But she is situationally pretty decent. But similarly, I would never pick her in a pub uncoordinated because, especially if you're not a good Lena player, that's then you're really not picking her at all, but maybe possibly picking her in some specific team coordination thing. If you're coordinating, you say, all right, well, we have 2 support players for sure, and using Hakuna Marana as an example, if me and Faf come into a game, we say, all right, I'm going to play support Lena, he's like, oh, okay, I'll play Shadow Demon. That's great, because we're coordinated and we know, all right, we're playing a roaming support duo that's Shadow Demon Lena or Kunkka Lena or some other setup. But if you're in a solo queue game and it's all right, well, I'm going to pick Lena because I have to play 5 support, and then you're thinking, oh, well, I'll get a 4, and then the guy's like, oh, I'm going to play LC jungle. That's actually a bad example. LC is good with Lena. I'm going to play Lycan jungle. And you're like, all right, well, we've just lost. I can do nothing. Same thing with her mid. Her mid is a very specific timing kind of thing, right? She has points where she is really strong, so she's going to suffer if your team is uncoordinated. And while they may be winning their lanes, they're not able to aggress. So then your advantage at the 12-minute mark is irrelevant because you can't quite solo kill heroes, but you also don't have teammates to come with you to make 2 people 2-man ganking work. Yeah. So she's another good example. Any of the heavy pushing heroes, Chen is another top 5 for sure, right? Because he has a very specific timing window. He performs a very specific action. He only really does one thing. So
possess animal and heal.
Possess animal, right? Yeah, and he makes those animals hit buildings. That's all he does. And he heals, of course, but even the healing
and
is
requires
coordination.
I can never land the stomps with the centaurs, though.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever landed one.
Really?
Maybe with the Helm of the Dominator. But
I was
never
gonna
with
say,
Shen.
yeah, you're a HOD player, so like you should work on that.
But Shen, it's just too many guys, and I like Tornado, and then I'm like,
All right, Wazoo, real quick before we have to wrap the show up, who top 5 heroes that require coordination that you don't like to pick?
Meepo, I'm taking Broodmother too because that's one we brutally saw Roland play for months. I think.
Yeah.
And he's just like,
she also is just bad right now. By the way,
but
I don't want
this
to
is like
cut
a
you
year
off.
and a half ago, and he just like we'd get like the safe flame would be gone. Sure, that would be gone, but then we'd lose the game like every time.
Brood has like one of the lowest win rates of any hero in like even 2K pubs.
There's a reason, but there's a reason too. You only see her picked 2 or 3 times in some tournaments, and then not at all in others because like she's a very specific hero. So that would definitely
and her
be
counters
one.
are very popular anyway.
Right. Yeah, and that's true. Okay, my third is gonna have to be Io. Again, I'm keeping him on the list because I stand by that. He's probably the most dependent hero in the game. I mean, I don't know who else you could say. I'm going to pick up Oracle as well because I've had some experience with that, and it's way better when you're able to talk to the person and know how it works, and they understand like when to tell you how to aggress and stuff. I think you can name a lot of supports because that kind of work like that in a weird way, and then some that are just so general. You know what I mean?
Well, and I think even on the coordination front, Coddle kind of comes to mind as a hero that,
and he's another one of those that's in the median, like you said. That, like he
can do a
very
lot.
good. He can illuminate lanes and shit and give mana, which is pretty good. But at the same time, to like do good relocates and stuff like that. Like,
well, and
it takes
I couldn't tell you the last time I played Coddle in a pub and like successfully used relocate.
Right.
Yeah, I don't even use it honestly. Unless somebody pings me to use it, I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
Half the time they'll rage at you and be like, "Why did you bring me here? I was
4?
farming top lane."
That was close enough.
Pushing tier 3s.
Whatever. But like, I'd also add like Lycan then.
All right,
like,
so I'm gonna sneak in. I'm gonna sneak in one final question
Convince me.
on the flip side. Okay. Now, on the direct flip side, who are the 5 heroes you think can perform relatively well, no matter what level of coordination the team has?
Do you want me to go first on this one, or are you going?
Sure. I have a suggestion though. I think we should both do this, but say like 1 for the 1 role, 1 for the 2 role, 1 for the 3, 1 for the 4, and 1 for the 5.
All right.
Okay.
If that makes sense, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, all right. I'm gonna go back and forth. Wazoo, your 1 role.
My 1 role that you can like kind of always play and is pretty good. I like the Drow. Because even if like in my level, like supports will just go to the off lane and screw over the off lane, they'll just stay down there. And so I've just been picking Drow, making sure the lane equilibrium stays back, playing that pocket, and usually I can come into a game. I mean, she's a pretty general and good pick, but I mean, of course, there's times where she's very bad, and that's just where you don't pick her. But that would have to be my number 1 go-to right now. What about you, Ursi?
I would say Jug. It's funny you mentioned Drow because Drow is like, now she is like that because she's so strong in the late game, but she used to be the exact opposite. She used to be like you only pick her in very specific coordinated lineups. But yeah, Jug right now I would say like he has super high variability options for his builds. He can deal with a lot of different things. He can be first picked in like worst case scenario, you get countered by like somebody that stuns or
maybe
AA
maybe to an extent.
AA, yeah, a little bit, but like, if you pick even like Sven is another good example of a 1, but both of those, they have minor counters that they can be dealt with. But if you're just saying I'm a solo player and I'm just gonna need to do something, you just pick Jug. Yeah, Jug's fine.
Wazoo, you're 2.
I might have to steal your boy Carl right out from under your feet, dude.
I was actually about to say that, so I'm glad you got it first.
Yeah, because I don't play Invoker, but I can see the versatility and variability in that hero and why he's still picked. He's good if you can play him. Because,
if you can play him, yeah.
And that's the thing is like I can't. So it's like I recognize the power in that guy lately. I see him in almost every game. PA used to be that way, I guess, but with the dagger nerf mid, it's like
I haven't. Well,
it's I don't know. It's not as good, right? You have to be like right up on him in the first level or 2, but not right up.
I haven't felt it that much with PA yet. I'll be honest.
Well, I play a carry lane a lot, so you don't feel it too much. But mid, I mean, you can't just stand back behind tower and dagger spam with a Blightstone anymore. Like you gotta at least take some risk.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. And you generate wand charges. We talked about this last week, so I won't go on about it. But
right, yeah.
It's mostly just a nerf to support PA, because that should have never happened.
All right, Ursi.
Let's see. I would probably say Quap. Like, she just fits into a lot of things. She, again, to stress this point, she has a high variability quotient, I guess I would say, to completely make up a term. She can do late game builds that are right clicky. She can do mid game fighting builds. She can do deep push builds. She can do a lot of different things. And yeah, she does have counters and stuff, but if you're playing alone, Quap is able to set up things, but also if things get quiet, you can say, all right, well, my team can't fight right now because we just use all our team fight ultis. So you could just like push out side lanes, farm the jungle, farm whatever. So I think Quap would be high on my list.
I would be tempted in that mid role to put like lane dominators there, like a Viper or you know what I mean? Like because I know you hate Viper. I know you do.
No, Viper. I think Viper's probably not to be mean, but I think Viper is actually one of the worst examples because
really?
Viper is very specific, right? And Viper, if you go into the late game with Viper, or if your team doesn't work around the fact that you're really good in the 10 to 20 minute mark, then it's like, all right, well, I'm playing Viper and I'm useless now because it's 40 minutes and I have Aghanims and like a mech that is irrelevant by now and like phase boots and like a Manta. And it's like, okay, well, I did really well, but it doesn't matter because my hero sucks at
He's one of those heroes you can play
10
around.
to 20 minutes.
You play around the hero, and then by the time you actually engage, it's like he doesn't do shit to you.
Fair,
Yeah,
all right,
the lane dominator
sense.
point is valuable though. I definitely think that. I think Tinker would also be on my list for that because he's a high like personal performance hero.
Yeah, and can operate solo in a lane if he
I think there's
all
much
around
to be
the map.
said for personal performance heroes in that position.
All
so
right.
you can name a lot of things, but my 3 is going to be in the off lane. I'm going to go channel my boy Flub, because he's my sensei, and say Underlord. He's been talking to me a lot about that. I mean, it's very good right now. He's a versatile hero
but he does lose out. He does lose out on the coordination front somewhat with
his
ultimate.
ult. But I mean, the thing is that thing's always good too, just to escape. So it's like.
And you can force it upon your
lose.
teammates.
Right.
You don't need coordination. You just need to move faster than your idiot teammates. Get a blink dagger and be like, all right, you're coming home.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
But you're right. I mean, with coordination, it's another one of those heroes that does benefit from it. But his other abilities are so good that it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So.
All right, Ursi, who are you putting in the off lane?
Let's see. So I have 2 options right now that perform very different things in the off lane. And, oh, man, there's so many good suggestions. All right, so Tidehunter would be the first one.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
He's just very, he just has team fight. And, you can...
It never hurts to throw a Ravage into the middle of a team fight.
Nope, never hurts.
On the other hand, if your team is, doing dumb things and, they're overextending and stuff, he's a little harder to save things. But
if they're doing things that are that dumb that they can't take advantage of a Ravage, I think you were never going to win that game no matter who you played or no matter what they played.
Timbersaw is another really good example of a 3 where if he has at least a mediocre time in lane, he can really hit his stride and perform individually right? And you don't need your 4 teammates to be following up on a Ravage if you're playing Timbersaw and you're jumping around and killing everybody.
Yeah.
Also Sand King because he's the god hero and you can never go wrong.
All right,
with
that's
Sand
all
King.
you get. That's all you get for off lane.
Oh man, never mind. Sand King's my 4.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
out. I don't get to talk about 4.
All right, the 4. Wazoo.
My 4 is going to have to be Bounty Hunter. You convinced me. He can be good in just about any situation. Track's always good. Track Gold gives you an inherent ability to generate income for yourself without taking kills, and it benefits your team. That support for roaming role is very freaking good.
Yeah, I guess I feel like in a 4 spot that Bounty feels a little bit weak. I think I would rather have the Ricky. In that spot, just because you can kind of transition into a carry a little bit easier than
that was a
I
personal
think
pick for me. I'm thinking if I had to play 4 in a pub situation, and I'm thinking something that would jive with the team, it's definitely got to be the Bounty for me because I put a lot of games into him.
Yeah,
and I know how to stay out of a fight after.
But at the same time, I don't know. Utilizing your invisibility to its fullest still requires some level of coordination from the rest of the team. I mean, I guess you can make the argument, I can just pop in, and so long as I know I've got the vision advantage. Then you
get an early Blightstone,
okay,
you can snipe couriers, you can harass lanes, you can do a lot, you can pull, you can ward, you can do like a jack of all trades type thing. So yeah, that would probably be my answer for that. But I don't play a lot of 4 either, so take my suggestion with a grain of salt.
What are your thoughts on the 4, Ursi?
Well, Sand King is my official answer. Again, he's the god hero. He can do everything. He can gank. If the game's not going great, he can farm. Everybody kind of knows what he's going to do in a solo queue mentality, right? The other 4 people are not going to be surprised to see you sitting in the trees waiting for an epicenter, right? They know what's going to happen. They know the function you perform, and they know what your timings are going to be, and he can do a lot of different things. To weigh in on your guys' Ricky versus Bounty thing, I think Ricky is better if you have like even a minimal amount of coordination, but Bounty Hunter can really excel in solo queue because he just ambiently, is that the word? He just passively gives your teammates gold. Yeah. For them to just do whatever they want with. Also, he can compensate for their weaknesses because he's a natural mech builder, and he can kind of go any item, which is another very valuable thing, especially with 4s and 5s and 3s to a certain extent, depending on the hero.
That's what I like about him. Like, you can get the Greaves if you need them. You can get Deso if you need it. You can get a Diffusal if you need it. You can get Urn if you need it. You can get Drums.
You can go Vlads.
You can go Vlads for your team. Like, he is just kind of something that can mold into multiple positions. And let's not forget, like, going and shadow walking and warding and dewarding and stuff is pretty good. I mean, like, you can't reach the wards unless you have, like, a quelling or something sometimes, but it's like, it's pretty good to be able to get out of a situation and get a good ward down.
Yeah, I guess the only reason I say I prefer, and I get and I do like the argument that, yeah, you can kind of passively make up for the fact that maybe your team can't farm or doesn't farm effectively with track. But I guess the reason I say I like Ricky in that position is because I and Ursa, you're kind of the person who made me think along these lines long ago. But I like the idea of a support that can transition, and I feel like Ricky has an easier time transitioning into a carry or semi-carry role than Bounty does in the long run.
Yeah, I agree. I think both are very good for this exact conversation. I just like Ricky. I've seen too many 4 Rickies that have a bad time because the mid laner is playing, or the enemy mid laner is playing something that is impervious or less susceptible to harass and doesn't need to worry about smoke. Like, let's say the enemy mid's a DK. It's like, okay, well, I'm playing Ricky and I'm roaming and I can't do anything to this mid laner, but I don't want to sap XP. But if I can't go to the safe lane because he needs XP, and I can't jungle and I can't pull because I'm gonna turn invisible and the creep's gonna de-aggro. Whereas Bounty, it's like, all right, well, things didn't go great in mid. I kind of sit around, I can sap XP from the jungle. I can, move and do things. And then a Ricky that's behind from the early game that doesn't have those things, he doesn't have a real comeback mechanic. Whereas Bounty, it's like, all right, well, my early game ganks didn't go well because the enemy mid was tanky, or my middle laner sucked for any variety of reasons, let's say. But he has track, so it's like, all right, well, things didn't go great, but if you get one team fight worth of track gold, then suddenly you're a rich man and you have a mech, and then you could say, all right, team, let's push. So again, I think
you got to be aware. You got to be more aware of your team than your team's got to be aware of you.
Yeah, and that's what we're looking for here. Is where because
if you just don't float, get good tracks. Yeah. Track is never on cooldown, and you're just. Then you have vision on every guy in the positionally. So you can
and
get
that's also true. That vision advantage.
The vision used to be a lot. Remember when it used to show around the hero too?
God,
it's what a thing, man! It was like, why would you think that's good? Now it's where it should be. You just see the hero, and like it's still very, very good.
So do I even need to ask who the 5 is, or is it just going to be Omni Knight?
That was going to be mine.
Yeah.
But that's what I play all the time when I'm like don't know what to play and I just have to play carry or Lion. I would say Lion is my other one as well.
I think Lion's a better example.
I love Lion.
Because one of the big things I look for in a 5, especially if it's a solo queue game where you can in most games, regardless of your bracket, in most games you're going to have a jungler, or at least in a large amount of games you're going to have a jungler. If you're playing Omni Knight, you're going to have problems because he can't zone. As the 5, he's really weak at zoning the vast majority of offlaners. And if you are going to zone him, you have to commit everything to it. And he is not as good as a hero like Lion at if your mid's getting gone on. Omni just TPs. He has a 90 damage / heal that he can use that has a long animation. He has repel, which depending on the matchup is fine. Whereas a hero like Lion, it's like, okay, well, my mid's getting ganked, you TP, you impale, and you hit 1, maybe even 2 people, depending on what's happening. So I like having that value of instant reaction on like a Lion or a Sand King or anybody with a stun, basically, compared to, if your 5 is a Winter Wyvern, it's like, okay, well, my mid's getting gone on. I can TP in, I'm going to Arctic Burn, or I'm going to do a little damage, I'm going to do whatever, I can heal a little, but she's not really going to, she can't react super quickly. Whereas Lion with an instant cast Hex...
Dazzle's up there for the same reason I would play the Omni, because it's something that like, and we're talking about vastly different skill levels here as well, but like in my skill level, if someone's healing you and warding and like building mana boots, like
you're smooth sailing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you're even getting to that.
Not only
point,
that, but
it's like
if somebody's
you feel
able
like you
to,
might be able to win.
if somebody's able to heal you and simultaneously do damage to the enemy, like, and I get your point with the cast animation, but I'll tell you what, I think I hit 4 out of, at our skill level, I think I hit 4 out of 5 like Omni heal bombs on my allies.
Yeah.
Like,
I think the other big thing that, and this is one of the main reasons I don't pick Omni as much as the 5. I pick him sometimes as a 4, and I think his best position by far is the 3. But Omni has the weakness of, if he's playing from behind, he is a extremely, extremely worse hero than he is from playing from ahead or at even a medium level, right? If Omni is behind, he doesn't have mana to even use his ult and 2 heals. Like, if he's playing from behind, he is shafted entirely. Whereas a more basic stunning hero, like a Lion or a Venge or, a Dazzle even is another decent example, or a CM, if you're playing from behind, your stuns are still going to be fine and you can still do a bunch of them. And, those kind of heroes playing from behind, I think, are better than playing Omni from behind. Playing Omni from behind sucks, honestly. I hate it so much.
yeah, for sure. Okay.
I also have,
All right, we've gone long. We've gone longer than I intended, so I'm not even going to give you guys 60 seconds to talk about anything. I'll give you 15. Wazoo? Anything before I close this bad boy out?
LD tweeted, I guess the secret is out because Secret will not be playing in the qualifiers for the Summit 6.
Ooh, boy.
All right, Ursi, got 15 seconds. Any final words for us?
I got nothing. Westworld was good. I'm excited for that show.
I still haven't watched episode 2.
It was good. I watched it right after the debate, and it was good to take the edge off.
Yeah, that's what I should have done. Instead, I played Dying Light.
I don't play that game,
Yeah.
but I'll take your word for it.
It's
I also
pretty
don't
good.
play
It's
anything
pretty
but Dota, so
We picked it up on the Steam sale. It was just good. Yeah.
I've heard good things.
Good to change things up every once in a while is what I figure. So, all right. Well, that's going to be it for us, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for bearing with us through all of our Team Secret drama and our wonderful discussion about
It's
coordinating.
not our
with
drama.
heroes.
It's Kamal's drama.
That's right. It's not our drama. I'm not going to feel bad about it either. Flub with 2 B's. If you're out there listening. If you guys want to find us, we're at defenseofthepatients.com. Look at us up on Twitter at .p_show. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, all your favorite podcast apps, just by searching Defense of the Patients. Click through our Amazon banner at the website if you want to help support the show. Of course, leaving reviews with iTunes is another great way to do that. And the Patreon, where you can go and you can donate some money. And one of the cool rewards that we're working on right now is doing replay reviews. So if you're interested in having one of the .p show hosts do a replay analysis of your one of your games, just to head to the Patreon and check it out and give us a little donation. And we're going to start paying out those rewards or fulfilling those rewards in November.
Yep.
So let's see.
And commission to podcasts. If you're into that kind of thing.
Podcasts. If you want us to spend an hour talking about Bloodseeker and only Bloodseeker, and you want to make, or hey, you know what you can commission for the low price of $50. An Ursinity solo Underlord podcast.
Or Whiteboard podcast.
Or the
I'd do
Whiteboard
it.
podcast.
I am putty within your hands, kind listener, aka patron sponsor.
That's right.
It's fun though. I've listened to other podcasts that have done commission podcasts, and it's a good time. So I hope I get to do one, unless like I'm unpopular and somebody's like, yeah, I don't want. Everybody else can get commission shows. I'm like, yeah,
I'm going to get hundreds. I bet, me and Flub.
Yeah.
I almost want to like donate $50 myself so I can like commission a like Korean drama podcast. Man, that would be fun.
That
Just
you
to put that on
Proud
our
to do with
feed.
you.
Oh boy. Oh yeah, that's true. I could force me to do with me. Oh man.
That's a good idea.
Boy,
so
this is a dangerous. You
yeah,
should not have brought that up.
Oh man. So these are the types of things that are going on over at the .p Patreon.
I make Flub do it with me. He does it anyway. He just listens to me, and I just ramble about like Korean reality TV.
I'll commission a $50 podcast where Flub has to sit and listen to you read him the entire EE blog about the Team Secret drama.
I'll commission a podcast where you actually close out the show at a decent time.
Oh, at a decent time. Excuse me. Okay, and of course, twitch.tv/.ptv, youtube.com/.ptv1. There's a numeric 1 there. And the Wednesday in houses. If you're listening to this Wednesday and it's not 9 p.m. Eastern, guess what? There's still time for you to go check out the .p in houses over at the Twitch stream with Growdy. Thanks to Growdy, of course, for running those things. They're always a good time. I got to play. I think I've played in the last 2 weeks. At least we've gotten one game in, and it's been a blast. It's always fun to play with people. It's cool to see this community. And just interact with folks that have been listening to the show for a while and haven't had a chance to pop by. It's a really great time. Really good folks. Check out the Discord. Oh, I guess I could plug the Discord, discord.gg/.p if you want to join it. That's our new invite link because we're partnered with them, and one day somebody's going to wear a Discord hoodie around here. That's what I heard.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm excited for whoever gets that.
Yeah.
Captain Silver Fox.
All right, so before Wazoo kills himself because he's so tired of sitting here in this room with me, and I can see it on his face.
I don't get paid enough for this.
Until next time, this is Cyphus for Wazoo and Ursinity saying good luck and Godspeed.